And I will make you host, which means you can end the session as well at the end. Make host. Yes.
Yep.
You're now the host, and you should be able to share anyway, but I will need to retreat in another 5 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ellie. Thank you, Phil. It's Ilu Nishmas, your father, is it right? I remember your father well. I remember him well. He was a very chashuv yid, your father. And there should be Ilu Nishama for him. How many years ago is that? It's
5 years ago.
5 years ago. Not long. Not long. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Nice to be back again. Baruch Hashem, Baruch Rofei Cholim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us back from these pandemic threats to our life. But Baruch Hashem, we're well, and Ellie's also back in action. So thank God, all is well, and we can continue with our regular Torah learning. I gave a share yesterday, actually, to a group of. I give a Monday share where quite a number of Americans are present, and I congratulated them on the 4th of July. There doesn't seem to be such a big deal made in Israel here about 4th of July. I know. So they said to me, yes, we're celebrating, but you're British. For you, it should be a Tanis. For you, it should be a sad day, 4th of July. You lost the colonies. We had a discussion a little bit about it. I said, it's absolutely not true. I mean, there's no question in my mind that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the Siyata D'Shmai of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to allow the United States to be created the way it was created, was certainly a blessing for Klal Yisrael. It was a refuge, was the biggest refuge for Klal Yisrael to escape from Europe and persecution and Russia and pogroms, and also in terms of Medinas Yisrael. I think HaKadosh Baruch Hu, certainly it was definitely an act of hashgacha to create the United States of America, and I'm happier that America was created in terms of the support it's given to Jews, refugees, and to the Medinat Israel over the years, greater than my sadness that King George lost some of his colonies. That doesn't really actually, not really a cause for a tinus for me. So certainly 4th of July is an important moment, I think, for Klal Yisrael, the creation of the United States of America. Okay, we are, to remind you, we're back in Sefer Bereshis, interestingly, just by a little bit of contemporary Israeli culture, some of you might be aware of the fact that one of the top rock singers in this country at the moment, at the top of the list of hot songs, is a fellow called Hanan Ben Ari. I don't know if any of you have heard of Hanan Ben Ari. If you haven't, look him up and listen to him. And he's a poet and a Dati singer, and he sings about very interesting themes. And his latest hit is actually very close to the topic of our Tuesday morning shiurim. Our Tuesday morning shiurim last quite a number of months have been based on the principle that Sefer Bereshis is the foundation of the whole of Jewish history, and that all the yesodus, all the principles of Yahadut and of Emunah and of Jewish history going forward can be found in Sefer Bereshis. And he came out with a song on which I believe is called something like Ani Cholem Chalomo Shel Yosef, that I have the dreams of Yosef. But the whole song, if you listen to the words of the song, is about how the narrative of Sefer Bereshis relates to all of us, how all of us have been thrown out of Gan Eden, and how all of us have suffered a mabul in our lives, and how all of us have tried to erect a Migdal Bovel, and how all of us have left our father's homes. And he goes through the narrative of Bereshis as a personal narrative of his own. And it's a very beautiful song and a poem written by this fellow Hanan Ben Ari. I think his name is Hanan Ben Ari. And what I find amazing is the entire Israeli secular culture has been taken by this song. it's sold in its millions. I mean, it's become a very, very popular a song, where really it's simply taking the narrative of the Chumash and applying it in people's personal lives, and he speaks about himself as sort of reliving the lives of, particularly of Yosef, that he's been put in the bar, and he's had dreams, and then he's been freed from the bar. But it's very interesting how he's personalized the whole narrative of Bereshis. And if you get a chance to listen to it, I recommend it. I don't get any commissions on this, incidentally, but it's I'd recommend it as something which is maybe the musical accompaniment to our Tuesday morning Shia. So we're looking at Sefer Bereshis chapter 17, and just to remind you, because we didn't have a Shia last week because I was out of action, but just to remind you, in chapter 17, we looked at several crucial moments where Avram and Sarah got their new names, where their names were changed, where Avram gets the mitzvah of the bris milah, and Yitzchak's name is also brought out, and there's several very crucial issues there that I want to have a look at a bit more closely. One of the complicated points in chapter 17 is the relationship of the Chumash to Yishmael. That you understand that until the Yishmael has a bris milah in the same way as Avram has a bris milah, and the descendants of Yishmael have preserved that mitzvah of the bris milah. Although interestingly, they do it slightly differently. They don't do the complete process of the bris milah. I'm not going to go into the actual gory details in this shir, but there are certain details of the bris milah which are not fulfilled by the Ishmaelim, but the reference to Yishmael in chapter 17 is interesting. That's what I want to start with this morning and have a look at that. In actual fact, it's interesting that in the Zohar is very sad. The author of the Zohar is very sad about the fact that Avram speaks with such affection about Yishmael. Let's have a look at the psukim, and then we'll see how we're going. Let's have a look here. See if I can get out. No, 1 second. Bear with me for a moment. Get by. Second. Okay. There we go. That's the text I want to look at. So let's just have a look at these psukim for a minute. Avram, right? The changing of the name of Sarai to Sarah. Maybe I just want to pause on that for a minute. It's an interesting detail which was relevant a couple of weeks ago in the Parshas Shlach Lecha. So Sarai's name is changed to Sarah. And there is an interesting medrash, and I think I've mentioned to you a few times already that the medrash uses certain mechanisms to express deeper ideas, simplistic mechanisms. So here there is a medrash on this pasuk which speaks about the fact that Sarai's name is changed to Sarah, and she loses the yud. She loses the yud at the end of her name, and it's made into a hey. And I mentioned to you that hey, the letter hey, is connected in the Hebrew symbolism, connected with fertility and having children, the letter hey. Upon him, the Medrash says that the letter yud came to complain before the Borei Olam. The letter yud came to complain before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And of course, you understand that this is a midrashic metaphor. You understand? This is not the letter yud is not able to complain about anything, but the Chazal couch it in terms of Ki'ilu. In other words, the letter Yud, were it able to speak, it would complain that it was the letter of a tzaddikus, of a very important woman, the matriarch of Klal Yisrael, and suddenly it's lost. What's going to be with me, says the letter Yud. I had a very special place in the future of Klal Yisrael, and I'm lost. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives it, the Medrash gives it answers. Does anybody know what the answer is of that letter Yud, the lost letter Yud? Anybody come across this at all?
He gave it to Yeshua.
Yes. That when Vayikra Moshe as Hoshea bin Nun Yehoshua, that the name of Hoshea, the name of Yehoshua was originally Hoshea, and Moshe Rabbeinu adds a Yud to his name. Adds a Yud to his name. So the Medrash says that Yud came from Sarah. That Yud came from Sarah Imenu, and that it wasn't lost. That's the Medrash. Now, what's interesting is, what do we make of a Medrash like that? Chazal are not just telling us a little word game of missing letters and filling them in. Chazal are always telling us something much more profound. So what I want to say to you is a peirush that I've seen in a couple of places, that in actual fact, the Avram and Sarah are originally called Avram Ivri, right? Avram Ivri, the word Ivri was created in connection with Avram. On the word Ivri, on one level, the word Ivri is a reference to Avram Avinu's ancestor, whose name was Aver, Shem v'Aver. Aver, Ayin Beis Reish, was a great grandfather of Avram Avinu, and he was a tzaddik. And Avram Avinu still knew Aver, and he went to learn from Shem v'Aver, and Avram identified with that ancestor, right? We've all got multiple ancestors, right? And we can't choose our ancestors, but we can choose which ancestor we would like to identify with, which ancestor we connect to, and decide this is the ancestor I would like to be connected to. So Avram Avinu, of course, his ancestors were Ovdei Avodah Zarah, right? Mitchil of Ovdei Avodah Zarah Hayu Avosenu Terach Avi Avram, right? Then Haggadah. So everybody knows that his immediate ancestors were all pagans. So what does Avram do? He searches. He goes online and he searches in his genealogical history, and he finds Aver, and he gets to know Aver, and he learns from Aver. He learns about Emunah and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and the Kuzari has got a whole narrative about this, that Avram Avinu learned a lot from Shem v'Aver, and that's why he calls himself Ivri. But what is the reason that Rashi gives for the word Ivri? Anybody remember? What is another peirush? Dina knows. I'm sure Dina knows. I can't hear you. You're muted.
Ever from the other side of the river.
That's right. May Aver from the other side of the river, but continue. There's another twist to this word Aver, not just the other side of the river.
Maybe related from Aver, from his family.
Aver means from the other side. So first pshat is it's the name of his great ancestor Aver. But the other pshat is that Aver means the other side. The other side. La'avar means to cross over. That he came from the other side of the river. But Aver also means, Rashi says, Shekol ha'olam mitzad echad v'hu mitzad sheni. In other words, that Avram Avinu had the inner strength to stand up spiritually and ideologically against the whole world. In other words, the whole world was involved in paganism and Ovdei Avodah Zarah, and he was Me'eva Hashemi, he was on the other side. And that needs an enormous amount of strength not to be drawn into the mindset and the culture that one lives in, right? To have an extremely clear, it needs a lot of clarity, a sense of emes, and to know that even though and the truth is the whole of Klal Yisrael throughout generations have drawn on this strength of Avram Avinu to be able to live wherever it was, to live in Egypt or in Rome or in Iraq, wherever it is, and be surrounded by a culture, a pagan culture, or a secularist culture, and not to be influenced. Where do we get that strength from? From Avram Avinu, who was the Ivri, who was Me'aver Hashem. He was able to stand up against the predominant culture and the predominant beliefs and the fashions and the norms of the society that he lived in, and live according to his emes. That is the koyach of Avram. And Chazal say that in this matter, Avram got a lot of strength from Sarah Imenu. And of course, it was his koyach, but Sarah Imenu was the one who was a primary mover in being able to stand up to all the currents of the thoughts and beliefs of the world at that time, and to go against them because she understood the emes, right? So what's interesting here is that let's fast forward to in actual fact, this whole idea of Klal Yisrael standing alone against predominant and prevailing philosophies and cultures is a very interesting theme in this week's parsha in Bolok, where Bilam says, "Ein am levodod yishkon uvagoyim lo yischashov," a very powerful pasuk in one of the four brachas that Bilam gives to Klal Yisrael in this week's parsha. So one of them is Hein am levodod yishkon uvagoyim lo yischashov. What does it mean? Who lo mitchashev. The Klal Yisrael have the power to live bodod, to live alone, and alone here means in a positive sense, to have their own values and their own beliefs and their own emunah, uvagoyim lo yitzchashav, but not to pay any attention to prevailing other beliefs and norms. And that koyach came from Avram and Sarah, who were able to go against the keneged hazeret, able to go against the stream because of their clarity of emunah and the clarity of emes. What's all this got to do with the Yud? So here comes the interesting point. A nice Torah of a Parsha Shlach Lecha, that the Yud that Yoshua got, so Medrash says he got it from Sarai. Why is that? Because Moshe Rabbeinu understood that it was likely that among the Meraglim there would be views, negative views about Eretz Yisrael. And he wanted to give, listen to this, he wanted to give Yoshua a boost, right? In what? In the koyach of Sarai Imenu, to be an Ivri, to be keneged hazeret, not to be drawn in and influenced by the prevailing beliefs of the Meraglim. So when he wants to give him a bracha, he gives him a Yud. So Pasha Pshat is Yud means Yod, is the Yud and the Hay of the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's already beautiful. But when the Medrash says that Yud comes from Sarai, they're telling us something. It's not a word game. They're saying that the koyach of Sarah Imenu, Moshe Rabbeinu injected that strength into Yehoshua to be able to withstand the pressure of the beliefs and mindset of the other Meraglim. So you have an interesting thing, that Yud is not lost, and it's Baruch Hashem still with us today, and it needs an enormous amount of strength. It needs an enormous amount of strength. And it's sadly a subject which is not a simple one. I've spoken often to young men and women in my community in England and here as well about frum boys and girls going on campus, going to university for a few years and being surrounded by enormous pressures of secularism, of promiscuity, of rejection of religion, of not just rejection, but making fun of anything religious and ridiculing the idea of HaKadosh Baruch Hu creating the world. All these ideas on a university campus are very powerful. And a Jewish boy and girl who go on campus today, anywhere in the world, right? They need to have a strong dose of Avram or Ivri and Sarah or Ivria to withstand those currents of thought patterns and beliefs. And sadly, many are not able to withstand it, and they come out of university with very having absorbed lots of the beliefs from their environment, which undermine a Jewish life. Anyhow, so this is Avram and Sarah's name change. Let's go back to the pasuk here just for a minute. So this we looked at last time, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to Avram, "Vayom Elokim Abel Sarah Ishtecha." So Vayipol Avram Apono Vayitzchak. He laughs, right? He rejoices. Okay, but here comes the pasuk that I want to look at a bit more closely, which we did not look at last week. This is the pasuk here. Vayom Avram, making this pasuk a little bit bigger. Vayom Avram Elo Elokim. Lu Ishmael Yichyeh Lefanech. This short pasuk is Avram Avinu having been told that Sarah will give birth to someone and his name will be Yitzchak. So Avram davens for Yishmael. So the pasuk pshat is that Avram Avinu is davening for his son Yishmael, and he's saying, you know, if you're going to give me a new son called Yitzchak, does this mean that Yishmael is going to die or he's going to disappear out of the family? No, he says, Lu Yishmael Yichyeh Lefanecha. Lu actually means in biblical Hebrew, it means like halavai. Halavai. I'm davening to you, halavai. I'm asking, please, that the Yishmael should live lefanecha. Lu Yishmael Yichyeh Lefanecha. Don't let him be lost. Let him also have an identity, right? And this tefillah, says the Zohar, was extremely powerful for the descendants of Yishmael going forward in history. And the Zohar who already understood that Klal Yisrael are going to suffer a lot at the hands of Bnei Yishmael, said that this was actually, the Zohar took the view, this was a sad moment in the history of Klal Yisrael. Would have been better that Avram Avinu would not have said this, because by saying this, he gave a bracha. Don't forget, Avram has the power of the bracha. He gave a bracha to Yishmael and to Bnei Yishmael, that they should grow and develop and be a big nation, and which in fact was the case. Rashi, interestingly, learns slightly differently. Rashi says, Lu Yishmael Yichyeh Lefanecha means Halavai Yishmael will live lefanecha. Lefanecha means will live a life of avodat Hashem. In a sense, according to Rashi, Avram Avinu is not giving Yishmael a bracha here. He's bemoaning the fact that he can already see that Yishmael is not living a life of emunah in the way that Avram would have wanted, right? So that's already a slightly different angle. We don't know. We've got no evidence from the pasuk at all about who Yishmael was at this point in time. But Avram Avinu is davening that Lu Yishmael Yichyeh Lefanecha, right? We should live lefanecha. Lefanecha means like with Avram Avinu, it says his halech lefanai v'yeh tamid, to go before God, to live a life of Yirat Shamayim. So he's davening to Kadosh Baruch Hu, Halavai Yishmael should live a life of Yirat Shamayim. Interestingly, in the Zohar as well, there's some interesting material which is relevant in our generation, that the Zohar writes that because Yishmael received this sort of bracha from Avraham Avinu, and because they got the bris milah, so the Zohar writes that the gift of Eretz Yisrael is connected to the bris milah. As you can see later on, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives the bris milah to Avraham Avinu, he says, I haven't got it here on the page in front of me, but the gift of Eretz Yisrael is connected to the bris milah, right? So the Zohar writes, because Yishmael also had the bris milah, he had a claim on Eretz Yisrael. This is a bit of a frightening idea, that the Bnei Yishmael had a claim on Eretz Yisrael, a spiritual claim, but Shamayim, because of the bris milah. But the Zohar ends, because they didn't do the bris milah properly, they didn't do it completely, the claim of Bnei Yishmael on Eretz Yisrael is finite, will come to an end. Right? At a certain point in history, says the Zohar, this is a moment that we're all waiting for every day. That every day we're waiting for the day when the claim that Bnei Yishmael have on Eretz Yisrael comes to its completion. Right? They do have a claim of some sort because of the connection to Avraham Avinu and because of their connection to the Bris Milah and because of their emunah in God. So they do have that claim, but that claim will come to an end. It will come to an end because they're not really living the type of life that Avram wanted them to live, and because their Bris Milah is not done completely with Priya, the same way that Klal Yisrael do it, therefore it's an incomplete Bris Milah, and therefore their claim is also incomplete. Okay, these are very interesting themes in Sefer Bereshis, which have ramifications throughout history, up to and including our times today. Okay, there is something else here I'd like to have a look at just for a moment. Second. Something here, we spoke about the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shin Daled Yud. Right? If you remember, the whole of the Bris Milah here starts, the opening line is, can you see, just to remind you, we looked at this actually about 3 weeks ago. The opening line is, Vahi Avram ben Tishim Shana b'Teisha Shanim, Vayerova Hashem el Avram Vayomer lo Ani El Shaddai. Yisalech Lefonei v'Yeitameh. This is the first appearance of this particular name of God, Shin Daled Yud, right? And this is an interesting, fascinating name by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which we very rarely use, right? The only famous usage of it I mentioned last time was we put it on the mezuzah on the outside, Shin Daled Yud. Anyhow, what is so the Ramban says that El Shaddai is a particular name. Look at a few lines here in the Ramban. The Ramban says here, "V'tam lahazkia ato shem zeh ki bo yasu hanisim hanistorim latzadik." Now the name Shin Daled Yud is a special name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which relates to the Nes Nista. In other words, throughout the Torah, there are, of course, Nisim. The Torah gives us an account of Nisim, of miracles, repeatedly in the Torah. But in actual fact, the history of Klal Yisrael going forward is based not on miracles. It's based on Nisim Nistorim. Nisim Nistorim is what we mention and refer to every day in our davening. We say, Moed Menach L'Loch. We thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu al nisecha shebachol yoyim imonu, v'al niflosecha v'tovasecha shebachol eis erev v'vokev v'tzaroyim. The whole idea that we view our whole lives as being guided by a hidden Yad Hashem, and that is something that Ramban repeatedly refers to as the Nes Nista, the hidden miracles, where HaKadosh Baruch Hu guides us, gives us ideas, gives us solutions, gives us protection, gives us strength, gives us health. Everything that we get from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not miraculous in the sense that it's supernatural, but it's miraculous in the sense that it's the Yad Hashem. It's the guiding hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And that, says the Ramban very beautifully, is the name Shin Daled Yud. The name Shin Daled Yud, look what he says here. V'tam lahazkia ato shem zeh, ki bo nasu nisim nistorim letzadikim. Lahatzel mimovis nafsham, l'chayosam barov, l'fdosam b'mechama b'yad chayriv, k'chol ha'nisim l'shanasim la'avrom la'ovos, k'chol ha'boim b'torah parshas b'chukosai, etc., etc., etc. Whenever the Torah speaks about promises that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will look after us in this world, whatever it is that we are being blessed with, those blessings in some way are nisim nistorim, and the Ramban wants to say, "Avakulam nisim avakulam tisnatech mareches amalzavus she'ein bohem shinoi min hadash olam." K'nisim hanasim al Moshe Rabbeinu, be'esar makas. These are not miracles like Moshe Rabbeinu did in the beginning with Kriyas Yamsov and with the Makkos and with the Mon and the Be'er. That's not what it does. These are hidden nisim. I'd just like to mention in passing that this is the Yesod, this idea of the difference between the Nes Golui and the Nes Nista, right, is being introduced here, says the Ramban, in the context of the Bris Milah, that going forward, Klal Yisrael are not going to live a miraculous life. And indeed, Avraham Avinu himself didn't really live with supernatural miracles, but he lived with the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu guiding him and protecting him. And this is Shin Daled Yud. This is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shin Daled Yud, which we put on the mezuzah. And incidentally, I'm sure everybody's aware of the fact also that the name Shin Daled Yud is written in to the tefillin, right? That the Shin is on the tefillin Shel Rosh, right? The Daled is behind, is the Kesher Shel tefillin in the back of the head, and the Yud is on the tefillin Shel Yad K'neged Haleiv. So the Shin Daled Yud is very, very important in terms of understanding, which is not my topic for the moment, but it's a very beautiful understanding of what the message of the tefillin is. But whatever the message is, it's connected to the name Shin Daled Yud, right? And it's a name that these are letters, right? We also have the minhag to put the Shin on the palm of our hand by the way we tie the Ritzuas in the shape of the Shin. All this has got to do with the Shin Daled Yud, which has got to do with the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu guides us with the Nes Nista. Incidentally, I just want to mention this in passing, is in Pashta Shavua, 2 days ago, Pashas Chukas, the real understanding of what was Moshe Rabbeinu's so-called mistake by hitting the rock instead of speaking to the rock revolves around exactly this point. If you don't understand this point, you can't understand what happened to Moshe Rabbeinu. So what really was his mistake here? HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, speak to the rock. Does anybody know what was the intention that Moshe Rabbeinu should do to speak to the rock? What point is there in speaking to a rock? A rock is not an item which one can speak to. Speaking to a rock seems to be like speaking to the wall. What really is the point of speak? What was the intention for Moshe Rabbeinu of speaking to the rock? Did anybody hear any interesting perushim on this or see anything on this? Anybody like to make a suggestion?
To clarify the power of Hashem, that there was another miracle.
Yes, that basically
just by speaking, because Hashem creates by speech.
Okay, yes, Hashem creates by speech. That's true. That's true. But if you and I'm gonna just take that one stage further. If you look, for example, in the Mefarshim, they'll tell you that actually Moshe Rabbeinu is here addressing a new generation. This is not the generation of Yotzei Mitzrayim, right? Rashi said in Parshas Chukas that we're now in the 40th year, and the whole generation of Yotzei Mitzrayim have already died, and this generation of the people are going into Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe Rabbeinu was supposed to teach them that going forward there won't be any overt miracles anymore. There won't be any more moments of Kriyas Yamsuf or the Makkos. There'll be no more supernatural intervention by HaKadosh Baruch Hu going against the laws of nature, right? And therefore, if you want water, right, we're not going to do a miracle by hitting it with a matter. The matter was a stick with which was associated with Moshe Rabbeinu's miraculous powers, right? What he should have done was he should have dafka taken the stick, the matter, and dafka not used it, in order to show them we're not going, from now on, it's not anymore Nisim Geluyim. What should you do? V'dibartem el asela, says the Hamekdava, you should daven. You should daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You should learn Torah. And going forward, when Klal Yisrael are in difficulties, the thing to do is not to look for miracles, but to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Right? The whole of Maseches Tanis in the Gemara is about how to daven with different tanesim and how to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in times of drought, in times of starvation, in times of danger, right? That we need to daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and ask not for supernatural miracles, but for nisim nistorim, for the hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu hidden within human affairs, right? And that's the dibartim el asela. So in other words, in Parshas Chukas, when there was a changing of the guards, so to speak, between the previous generation and a new generation, says the Hamekdava, there had to be a changing of hashgacha. The hashgacha no longer was operating through supernatural miracles. From now on, it was operating only through the hidden hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the Shin Dalad Yud, which is the hidden hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That is the Nes Nista, right? And this was a new lesson which Moshe Rabbeinu failed to teach. He had an opportunity to teach them this lesson at the Mei Meriva, and he didn't. Instead of teaching them to daven, what he did was he says, okay, you've got a problem, you need water, here's the solution, a miracle. He's going to hit it with the stick, with the matter, and miraculously water will appear. Interestingly, according to this Perush, when Moshe Rabbeinu is told that he won't, because he did this, he won't lead the Jewish people into the land of Israel, this wasn't a punishment for Moshe Rabbeinu. This was simply HaKadosh Baruch Hu saying to him, I can see that you are not the correct leader for the next generation. The next generation need a leader who operate on the Shin Dalad Yud principle of the hidden hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, for which we need to daven and learn and ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for help. Your way of doing things, which is using miracles, doesn't belong in Eretz Yisrael. Once you get into Eretz Yisrael, the Jewish people, if they want food, they have to plow and sow and reap and harvest and bake the food, and then they'll have food, right? They can't anymore get mon min hashamayim. But while they're doing it, they have to daven HaKadosh Baruch Hu for the rain and for prosperity. It has to go through a nes nista, has to go through a hidden hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Moshe Rabbeinu, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, that's not your strength. Your strength is the direct connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the direct transmission of the Dvar Hashem, and the direct application of miraculous solutions. And then therefore Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't go into Eretz Yisrael, because Eretz Yisrael is a place where we need to use our Torah and our Tefillah and our Emunah, but within the Teva, not lemala min ateva, not in supernatural ways. But there's no question that within Eretz Yisrael, we need to have the eyes with which we can see the hidden hand of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we can see it all the time. You just need to have a look at the map. You just need to have a look occasionally. I always find it quite sobering to look occasionally at the map of the world and of Israel and its surrounding nations, and some of the numbers of the inhabitants of the surrounding nations and the numbers of their armies and the degree of their hatred and hostility, and the fact that we live here, literally, in the lion's mouth, and we're living happily and safely and confidently in the lion's mouth, is if there's no greater sign of the Yad Hashem than Klal Yisrael in our generation living the way we live. And the fact that our enemies really are not able to do what they would really love to do, which is to eliminate us completely. This is only min hashamayim. And anybody who thinks that it comes from brilliant leadership should have a quick look at some of our leaders and will realize that it's not brilliant leadership that is keeping us safe and keeping us well, right? We'll realize straight away that it's only we live tachas kanfei hashchina. And this is connected also to this part. What's the connection to this piece of Chumash? Is this name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shin Daled Yud. And every time we put on our tefillin and we tie the Shin Daled Yud on, And every time we pass a mezuzah and the Shin Daled Yud is written on the mezuzah, it's to remind us that we need the eyes to see HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence even in the teva, even in the way which seemingly is happening naturally and not supernaturally. Nevertheless, there's the hand of HaKadosh Baruch. Okay, let's get back to the text for a minute. I think I looked at this very briefly. I just want to remind you is that in chapter 17 there is this very beautiful Rashi, because the pasuk says in chapter 17, "Ve'etno brisi beini uveinecha, va'arbe oschem me'od ma'od." This bris milah I will establish between us, and I will make you into a great nation. Ma'od ma'od. So Rashi says here a very beautiful line. What is the bris milah? What is the actual teichen? What is the content of the bris milah? Look at this Rashi, very special Rashi. This Rashi is ve'etno brisi. Rashi says two things: bris shel ahava, a covenant of love between HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Jewish people, right? Habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava, the love that exists between us. Uberis haaretz, and the covenant of the land of Israel. Lahorisha, look at this line. Let's look at this text of Rashi. Lahorisha lecha al yedei mitzvah zu. Very powerful expression here of Rashi. So Rashi understands the whole of chapter 17. That one aspect of it is that through the bris milah, that is the conduit. Lahorisha lecha al yedei mitzvah zu. Through this mitzvah, you will merit to inherit the land of Israel. So in actual fact, the bris milah was the mafteach. And this is what I'm saying to you throughout Sefer Bereshis. Sefer Bereshis contains the maftechot, literally the key ideas, which later on are crucial for the development of Klal Yisrael. And therefore, it's true that Yeshua only goes into the land of Israel and conquers it many centuries later. But the zechus with which Klal Yisrael inherit the land of Israel is connected to the bris milah and the covenant that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives Avraham Avinu in chapter 17, and that is that's the connection here. I want to have a look for a moment at a later subject in Sefer Bereshis, and I'm only bringing it here because of the connection to the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shin Daled Yud. Maybe I just want to say by way of introduction, the Shin Daled Yud. I think I bring the Gemara here somewhere. Okay, let's have a look at a Gemara in Chagiga about the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shin Daled Yud. That's something I just wanted to talk about a bit today. Right, it's very interesting. So what does the Gemara here say? Let's just make this a bit bigger. The Amar Rish Lakish. Everybody with me? This is a Gemara in Chagiga. My dichsev ani el Shaddai. What is written here when HaKadosh Baruch Hu introduces himself to Avraham Avinu as the God of Shin Daled Yud? So the Gemara here says, Anihu shalmati la'olam dai. It's very interesting that the Shin Daled Yud actually in Hebrew is connected, according to this opinion in the Gemara, with the word dai. Okay, Rabbi, so what does the word dai mean? Daled Yud.
Enough.
It means enough. It means enough. And it means enough in the sense that, like in Dayenu, we sing on Leil Seder. And even if HaKadosh Baruch Hu would only have done X, Y, Z, Dayenu, it would have been enough for us to be obligated to praise and acknowledge HaKadosh Baruch Hu, even if we got less than we were given. That's the Dayenu theme. So Day means enough, but it means a process which is ongoing And at a certain point, we say, die, that's it, it's enough. You've done enough, right? You're eating a meal, and then you say, die, it's enough, I've eaten enough. So die is the completion, the decision to end something. It's die, it's enough. So interestingly, the Gemara says, Anihu she'amarti la'olam die. Well, and it's true that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, but in the creation of the world, there was a moment, right, at the end of the creation, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, die. What does that mean? Omer Rish Lakish, B'shar shebara HaKadosh Baruch Hu es hayom, for example, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the sea, he got bigger and bigger until HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, that's it. This is the end of the sea, and from now on it's yabasha, it's dry land. Shanema goer bayom bayabeshu chol hanaoras hechriv. Basically, as the translator here says, I instructed the world to stop expanding. That's a very interesting thing. That, in other words, what is the idea? Let's just think about the idea of this for a second behind this. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu is creating the world, and the powers of HaKadosh Baruch Hu are Ein Sof, are infinite, right? And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates a world. The world which is being created could be infinitely growing and developing and getting bigger and more massive, etc., and becoming infinitely big. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, now I'm creating a world which is die. Die means the world is finite, right? And I'm definitely going to stop and not, basically, if you want to translate this Gemara into English, what Rish Lakish is saying is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'kavona techila. In his initial intention in the creation, he created an incomplete world. The world that we are given is an imperfect world. It's an incomplete world. Why did he do that? So Rish Lakish doesn't say that here in the Gemara, but Chazal explain that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created an incomplete world in order to give mankind the role of completing the world. That we need to make the world a better place. If the world was a perfect place, we would have nothing to do. In other words, the challenge of Klal Yisrael is to complete the incomplete world, right? And in actual fact, the world that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created, he bedafka created it in such a way that it wasn't perfect, that there are disasters, that there is suffering, that there are challenges of various sorts, in order that mankind should be challenged to, so to speak. There is a phrase that Chazal use in a few places, that a person who engages in tikkun ha'olam, who engages in doing important things for mankind and for Klal Yisrael, so there's a phrase Chazal use, na'aseh shutaf la'kadosh baruch hu b'maaseh bereshis, that we become a shutaf, we become partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in maaseh bereshis. It's a bit of an outrageous thing to say, that we are partners with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the Borei Olam, and he's infinite, right? He's a kol yochol, and who are we? We are sort of puny little finite individuals, but it's not true. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created an imperfect world, calling upon us to perfect it in some way to complete it, right? And this is contained, interestingly, in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shaddai. So what is Shaddai, according to that Gemara in Chadiga Yud Beis, means She Amar Dai. She Dai. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided, that's it, die, it's enough now, and all future improvements and contributions to the world are not going to come from me. They're going to come through human effort. And the human efforts are called upon to perfect the world. That is Shin Daled Yud. And we don't have a perfect world, right? Incidentally, there were many great philosophers who stumbled over this particular issue throughout the ages. You know, great philosophers who believed in God. People like, for example, Spinoza, and before him, Aristotle. They both believed in the existence of God, right? but they didn't believe in God the Creator. Because they said, among other things, they said, if God is finite, is infinite, and he has infinite power and infinite wisdom, then the world should be a perfect world. And we see it isn't a perfect world. There are disasters, there are natural disasters, there's human suffering, there are things that are going wrong. How is it possible, asked Spinoza, that an infinite God, who is all-knowing and all-good and all-able, should have created an imperfect world? It's not possible. And therefore, God is not the creator, chas v'shalom. And therefore, Spinoza denied the idea of the Borei Olam, right? He believed in God, but he didn't believe in God, the Borei Olam, because a world created by a perfect God should be perfect. Obviously, Spinoza had never learned Maseches Chagiga, Daf Yud Beis, right? Where Rish Lakish says that one of the names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is Shin Daled Yud, that B'kavana, HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates a world where he said, I'm not going to create a perfect world. I'm creating an imperfect world in order that to invite human beings to be a shutaf, to be partners with me in perfecting the world, partners with me in making this a better world. And what greater symbol is there of the Shin Daled Yud than the Bris Milah? What are we doing? Think about it for a minute. What are we doing with the Bris Milah? We're taking a little baby, a newborn baby, who is born, Baruch Hashem, perfect. Perfect. And what are we saying? We're saying, no, this is perfect, right? Out of his mother's womb, brought into this world by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, right? Shlosha shutfim ba'adam, say Chazal, 3 partners in the creation of a human being, the father, mother, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And what's the product? You think it's perfect. The answer is no. We're going to do a bris milah, and the bris milah is going to perfect the world. We are called upon to do something to this little baby. You think that he's perfect. He's 99.99% perfect, right? But there's this little bit of skin. By removing this skin, we are expressing the idea of Shin Daled Yud. We're expressing the idea that the world that is created is an imperfect world, and our mitzvah is to perfect it. And by doing the Bris Milah, we are becoming a partner with HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Maaseh Bereishis. And this is awesome. This is an awesome idea. And it's all contained in the word Shin Daled Yud. It's all contained in the word that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this imperfect world, and that was done for a particular purpose, a crucial purpose for our Avodas Hashem. But now I want to show you in the last few minutes of the Shia how this name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Shin Daled Yud, occurs later on in Bereishis, and with a slightly different nuance to it, the same idea, the idea of die, but look how Yaakov Avinu uses this word. Let's have a look at this for a minute. Yaakov Avinu says, okay. Right, so here we're in Parshas Vayeshev. We're in Parshas Vayeshev, in Bereishis chapter 43. Vayoma Yehuda el Yisrael Ovid, Shilcha hana iti. V'nakumo v'neilech v'nichya, v'lo nomus, gam anachnu, gam atov, gam tapenu. What is Yehuda saying to his father? He's saying, we have to go down to Egypt. We have to get food, otherwise we'll die of starvation. And we've been told that we're not welcome unless we bring Binyamin with us. Shilcho hana iti. Send the boy in my care. I take personal responsibility. And here Yehuda invents a new word, which has never been heard before in the history of the world. Onochi e'ervenu. Onochi e'ervenu. Does anyone know what erevenu, the Hebrew words erevenu, where does that come from? Onochi erevenu miyodit tabakshenu. So I will. What's a good translation here?
Guaranteed.
I will. That's right.
Collateral. I'll be collateral.
I will be collateral. Yes, thank you. I will guarantee. I will be an ore.
The first time it's mentioned in Tanakh.
It's the first time it's ever mentioned. First time it's ever mentioned. And it's from this pasuk that Chazal get the famous phrase, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'zeh. The idea that Kol Yisrael are mutually responsible for each other, right? I will be a collateral for Binyamin, Miyodi Tavakshenu, Im Lo Hevisi Elecha, etc., etc., etc. So, and then Yaakov agrees. Yaakov agrees, says, he says, okay, take along a gift to the, and look at the last line of Yaakov Avinu's agreement to Yehuda, a crucial moment in the history of the family of Yaakov Avinu. That's the moment they all decide to go down to Egypt, and that's in fact the beginning of going down to live in Egypt. And that's the beginning of finding Yosef. And all this happened because Yehuda said, Anochi Erevenu, I'll guarantee him, I'll look after him. And what does Yaakov Avinu? Gives them a bracha. And he says to them, Ve'el Shaddai Yiten Lachem Rachem. Suddenly, Yaakov Avinu, for the first time in his life, invokes this name of God. Ve'el Shaddai Yiten Lachem Rachem in Lifnei Ho'ish. V'shilach lochem es achichem acher ve'es binyamin v'ani kasher shakolti shakolti. So I'm taking a risk. If I lose Binyamin, I've lost everything, but I have no choice. And I'm doing it on the basis of Yehuda's trustworthiness. But what we're interested in at the moment is that when he gives Yehuda a blessing here, he invokes the word Shaddai. What does Rashi say about that? Have a look at this. So Rashi says, what is Yaakov saying? He's saying, look at this, very beautiful. Misha ama olamo dai. Yaakov Avinu is addressing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and he's saying, you HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you said to the world, die. What does this mean? What does this mean? It means you created an imperfect world, a world which contains suffering and sorrows and difficulties and disasters. You created this imperfect world. I'm asking you now, Yoma die l'tzorosa. I want you to say die to my suffering. Says Rashi about Yaakov is saying, shakatati min urai, because my whole life has not been, I haven't had any peace my whole life. And Rashi gives us a little bit of a list here. Soras Lavan, I suffered for 20 years with Lavan. Soras Esau, I was always on the run from my brother who hated me. Soras Rachel, the difficulties of Rachel not conceiving a child, and the sadness of Rachel and being deceived with Leah. Soras Dina, right, with Shechem. Soras Yosef, that Yosef got lost. Soras Shimon has now been taken captive. Soras Binyamin, and now Binyamin is going to leave me. So what's Rashi doing here? Rashi's saying, look at these long lists of heartbreaking moments in Yaakov's life, and he's saying it's enough. But there's an interesting idea here behind this. In other words, what Yaakov is saying to HaKadosh Baruch Hu is, it's true, you created an imperfect world, a world in which there are sorrows and difficulties and suffering, and that's all a nisayon, that's all a test for us to find solutions and to maintain our emunah. But there has to be an end to this, because if there's too much suffering, then we won't survive. Klal Yisrael won't survive if the suffering is of a degree that it's so much that we can't anymore maintain our emunah, we can't anymore maintain our strength. It's too heavy for us. And this is interesting that Rashi here brings down this interpretation of die, and he says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in a sense, just like he said die to the world and left an imperfect world, Yaakov Avinu davens HaKadosh Baruch Hu, yes, an imperfect world, but not so imperfect, not so much difficulties that we can't function at all. So that's his tefillah here. The die is, the Shin Daled Yud is the exact balance that HaKadosh Baruch Hu put into this world, that on the one hand, we are able to do mitzvahs and able to engage in tikkun ha'olam, that we can perfect an imperfect world and become a shutaf to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At the same time, the world is not so imperfect that we are unable to function at all. And that's Yaakov's tefillah. If this goes, Yaakov says basically, if this goes wrong, I'm finished. In fact, if I lose Yishmael, if I lose Binyamin here, then I'm finished. And I can't anymore function in the way that you want me to function as a shutaf in my separations. Okay, Rabbi, I think we've come to the end of our time together. Thanks a lot for coming online. It's lovely to see you all. And I'm still davening for the time in Rabbi Yomenu, where we will be able to have a shir face-to-face at some point, rather than just on the screen. But in the meantime, this is the second best solution, as economists like saying, this is the second best solution. So this is the second best solution. We've got a wonderful gift from HaKadosh Baruch Hu of online shiurim of Zoom, and it's always great to see you. And just to show you how in Sefer Bereshis are the Yesodus of our emunah, the Yesodus of our love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and for Eretz Yisrael, and the Shin Daled Yud name is the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, who guides us and protects us every moment of our lives. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Lovely to see you all. I wish you all Hatzlacha Rabba.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Don't
Thank
forget
you
to
so
turn
much.
off the recording.
Brilliant.
I'm going to turn off the recording, and Phil, it should be an Ilui Neshama for your father, Zechron B'bracha, who was indeed a very chashuv yid in so many different ways.
Amen. Thank you very much.